The following conversation is with the shoulder guy. As a personal trainer and someone who's dealt with a lot of shoulder injuries, I was really excited to have this conversation because I've used his techniques many times for both myself and for my clients. He trains clients online and out of his gym in Perth, Australia. I followed him for a long time on social media. I really think he brings good information to the table, and I trust what he says. This conversation was a lot of fun for me. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, well, welcome, Jason. We're live. Want to thank you for coming on the show. I just want to say I'm not ashamed to admit I've been very excited about this. I've followed your content online. For those who don't know, you're the shoulder guy on social media and YouTube. And that's how I found you. I have shoulder problems, and I literally looked up the shoulder guy, and that's how you came up. So just to get started, how did you become the shoulder guy? I've seen in your content you had an old injury, but I don't know the full story of what happened and how you ended up learning about shoulders.
Yeah, cool. The last part of the equation for me was when I dislocated my shoulder. That was when I was 29, so 7 years ago. Before that, I had a whole range of shoulder issues on both shoulders. So, and that was just on the back end of a lot of injuries, a lot of trauma when I was younger in the teenage years, and then poor training habits. And then starting to put more and more stress and try to continually push my body to the limits. And eventually, like, I lost the use of this hand when I was about 25, 26, somewhere in there. And that was kind of just broke me a little bit. At the same time in my life, at that period, I lost the use of my legs as well. So my body was pretty broken. And up until that stage, I was trying to push through and, keep going as males tend to do. But I got to a stage where I just couldn't. So then I stopped training for about 2 years. I stopped training, and then I started asking a lot of questions, flew around the world a little bit, asked a lot of questions of a lot of different people, and then started getting back into it, training and building my strength up. And then I dislocated my shoulder, and I had to really start from zero in terms of retraining my body, my mind, how to use my shoulder. Because before I dislocated it, I didn't have a correct knowledge of how to move my arm clearly because I lost use of it, and there was a lot of pain. And then dislocating it was kind of like a saving grace for me because it forced me to learn. Right? It forced me to learn a new way of moving, a new principle, new philosophy to follow from a training and coaching perspective for myself and my clients. And then, yeah, it took a good 18 months of me trying to learn that, figuring it out, to then say, oh, hey, if I can do that, change my pain, change my experience, and regain my shoulder capacity, then a lot of other people can benefit from all the stuff I learned. And that's where it started, and just went from there.
Gotcha. And then just as far as the timeline goes, were you a coach, like a trainer and a coach before kind of going down this path of reassessing your own habits and figuring out your own shoulders, or did you figure that out and then become a coach once you kind of realized you had something to share?
Yeah, no, I've been I was a personal trainer to start with since I was 18. Went through uni and
Okay.
always
Hmm.
did it as just a side job. And then when in my 20s, I took it on full time and actually made a profession out of it. And then stopped being a personal trainer when I kind of lost hope in the industry. That was when everything I learned got me to that point where I lost use of my arm and my leg, and I was just like, "What's going on here?" I can't go back to the old ways, so I had to find a different way, and that's when I then became a coach, a movement, a strength coach, and that's just the philosophy that I follow now. But yeah, so I've been a PT ever since I was 18, so that's 18 years now. That's scary.
Nice.
Shit.
Yeah.
I was talking
Didn't
to an
mean to
18-year-old
bring that
guy.
up.
Yeah, I was talking to an 18-year-old yesterday. I'm like, dude, I've been doing this as long as you've been alive. Oh man.
Yeah, it speeds up on you. And so diving a little bit more into that, on your journey, you said you traveled around the world, you asked a lot of questions, you talked with a lot of people, reassessed kind of what you knew and what you're doing wrong. So what kind of resources, what people were you talking to? Um, what programs were you a part of to learn?
Jeez, well, man, there's a lot, and I've been thinking about this literally the last few days. I just ran a workshop yesterday, and I'm like, the amount of content and principles and things and questions people answer or ask me, and then for me to give them an answer that makes sense in a very
Mm-hmm.
compact and precise manner, without diving down a rabbit hole for half an hour and then coming back out. Like I feel sometimes I feel I'm not sure if sad is the right word, but I feel sorry for people that um, are that stuck, are that down the rabbit hole, that lost, that hopeless, that helpless, that they're in that same space that I was. They're asking that question of like, hey, what does this mean? And unfortunately, the answer is then like, hey, well, it's taken me 10, 15 years to learn all this stuff. And now I can give it to you, but it's still going to take you a good 12, 24, 36 months to learn, embody, practice, and then come out the other side exactly where you want to be. Um, so for me, like I flew to the US a couple of times and just learnt from the strength coaches that were writing the books that I had access to. This was 10 years ago. This is
Mm-hmm.
before YouTube and Instagram became a big thing, which gave us access to all these guys just like from my home, right? This
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a thing back in my day. Shit. So we had to get on a plane and fly. Um, so I did that a couple of times. Like I'm not going to mention any names because then um, people will. I have. I try not to be too specific because if I
Mm-hmm.
say physio, if I say chiro, if I say strength, if I say whatever or yoga, people may pigeonhole that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
from a principle perspective, I talk mostly about principles, and the principles I've learned have come from people in the US, people from Finland, New Zealand. Ooh, Australia's got we got some really good people in Australia. By all means, if you do want to talk about any individuals specifically, then we can. It's just a matter of like what you want to talk about and for how long you want to talk about it.
Yeah. I understand. That kind of leads me into something I wanted to ask, which is like, as you've div- dove so deep into shoulder specifically, but really movement in general, um, how has your understanding of movement changed? Because I'm earlier in my career as a coach, but I've been training as my primary job for the last 6 months, but I've done it on and off since I was younger, 18 or probably something around there too. I've just had friends that would want help. So same kind of thing. And I don't know. It's we you have to as a to get the results. You have to feel what you're the movement. You have to kind of understand it on an intuitive level. So I'm wondering, through your deep dives, like how has your understanding of movement changed? And I'm interested that you're not going into specifics. Like you're not saying, oh, I studied under this guy with these accolades and that guy with those accolades, and now I have these accolades. You're not. You're getting down to the principles, and to me, that's the core feeling. So I don't know. Can you just speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And I will now that you've asked a more specific question, which now will give you some more specific people, right, and
Yeah.
some parts of my story that really changed for me. So, uh, you said what changed for me from a coach and personal training and then into movement. So, the big part for me, I had a lot of pieces of my puzzle, right? Now, the human body as a system has a lot of parts to it, right? You've got the muscle systems, your tendons, your ligaments, your bones, and everything in between. And again, that kind of whole period before YouTube and Instagram and before we had access to unlimited knowledge, right? I was relying on the people that my parents took me to or people around me recommended, right? Which is a very limited resource of education if you don't know any better or if you don't have a whole lot of money to go and pay the best in the world or in your particular area. So I was learning from physios, I was learning from chiropractors, I was learning from other health professionals and obviously other personal trainers, other strength coaches, all that kind of stuff. Um, I was learning a lot of different systems, but I was still broken. I still felt like I was broken. Still felt like I was missing something, right? I was following like Gray Cook's model of FMS, functional movement screen, and all of that.
Hmm.
Went down that path for a little bit, which is absolutely fantastic model, but it's also created on the back end of physio philosophy, right? Not movement and strength philosophy. So then I did that and it gave me some solutions, but it didn't give me all the solutions. And when I say that, every I've got to say, like every practitioner I've seen, I've unfairly expected them to fix me.
Hmm.
And that is a consistent expectation that a lot of people have when they go and see a practitioner about one thing, one pain, one issue that they're having, and they expect that practitioner to nail it and give them the 1, 2, 3 step solution to their issue. And their issue can be multiple different things that are leading to that one thing that then they're asking this person to deal with. So that was me, right? I was unfairly expecting a lot from the people that I was talking to. I expect a lot from myself now. And so that's why I'm very honest with people that I talk to is like, hey, I know what I can do for you. I expect results within 4 weeks. And if I can't do that, then I'm not the right person for you. But then, so what did I do? In Perth, here in Australia, we've got this wonderful lady, Julie Hammond, and she is the director of anatomy trains in the Southern Hemisphere. Anatomy Trains is a fascial company, fascial business, educational system. They got 3 levels of education that they provide. They do hands-on work, massage. I came from a massage background, so I did that at one point in my life. So I was interested in that kind of thing. And then I saw that they also do a movement, which is kind of along the lines of yoga, but not. Quite a different philosophy. And then they also do recently a new system which is anatomy trains in motion. Oh, sorry, in performance, right? In function. How do you actually apply all these principles to performance, right? And getting more powerful as an athlete. And that's the course that I ended up doing. I did it a couple of times. Learned from an amazing man, Ari Pekka from Finland, and if you haven't looked much into the fascial system, then that's probably where I would tell you as a young personal trainer or coach to start because it provides you with so much more insights into the human system and how we are one being, we are connected, and we cannot influence one thing without influencing another. But it's also understand the relationship of nervous system, fascial system, and then the muscle and skeletal system. And for me, a really big turning point was when I understood that the muscles are the workhorses of our system. They're just the last part to respond. They're doing what they're being told to do by nervous system and by fascial system are the 2 big players. But obviously, everything else is having had a word in there as well. So the understanding that the fascial system was a huge part in completing my puzzles, right? So I had all these
Hmm.
pieces that kind of made sense individually, but didn't give me the whole puzzle. I was missing something.
Yeah.
And that's where the fascial system really helped me to understand and connect the system. And it's like I'm learning new stuff every day, every week with it as well. And as everybody else is, it's only a new kind of research that they've been doing in the last 20 years. Um, yeah, don't quote me on that, but I'm sure Thomas
Yeah.
Myers, he's been doing it for his whole life. So, you know, but it is a relatively new system compared to what we've been studying in terms of the muscular system, for
Hmm.
hundreds of years.
Yeah. Um. All right. So what really just struck me what you said is how the whole body functions as one system, and you kind of gave some insight into how you understand that as a coach, as a trainer, and a practitioner. Um. So what I'm wondering is you focus on shoulders. You're the shoulder guy, but how has your understanding of shoulders and your deep dive into shoulders specifically like, given you insight into the rest of your system, your hip joints, or just the rest of your body? Like, how does diving deep into one area translate to other areas?
Yeah, so the system, it's funny how the system's connected, and like you can influence your hip socket, your hip joint, to improve your shoulder range of motion. That's quite an easy connection. If you improve spine mobility, your shoulders again will improve their range of motion. So for me, I got to the point where I started to understand that my shoulders were just responding to the rest of my body, how my rib cage was sitting. Whether it's tilted, whether it's rotated, whether it's like flaring, all this kind of stuff. And once you start to play around with the other parts of the system, the shoulders then change how they're working. For me, I often work with people for maybe 3 months, and then their shoulders are good, and then they're like, "Hey, can we also apply these principles to my hip or my knee or my foot?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course." So that's where we end up working. And I can be working with someone for 12 months and like just teaching them all this stuff and how to apply it to every single part of their body. For me, like I've had injuries to every joint in my body, so I literally have had to fix or work on fixing and figuring out how to manage all these old injuries that I built up, right from my toes, ankles, knees, hips. I've had everything there, and then yeah, my spine obviously, and freaking everything, man. So how it's connected, that's yeah, the shoulders, the start for me. The shoulders are the start. They tell a lot. They're like the breadcrumbs, right? There's a breadcrumb trail, and I just
Mm-hmm.
follow that to say, or for somebody, hey, if we change your rib cage position, then your shoulders will be a lot happier. But also for people these days, a lot of people are unconditioned, because we've been sitting for a long period of time. A lot of people like that, and but also a lot of young men are incorrectly conditioning themselves in the gym, right? And or injuries. So injuries can be a massive factor, or old injuries can be a massive factor in then how you are then training and whether you're building up strength correctly or not. And that's dependent on how well you've been coached in whatever you're trying to do. And if you haven't been coached well, then you're going to end up with some issues, whether it's in 1 year, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, you will end up messing yourself up if you don't do things well. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so it just takes a keen eye to see that. Um, a big part of like the learning was just body reading for me. So understanding how to see a body, how to see a frame, and then just assess what's going on within that system. What's holding tension, what's holding trauma, scar tissue, all this kind of stuff, and then what's responding because of that.
Interesting. Um, what I've noticed with my own injuries is whenever I get injured all the time. Like you said, I'm the same. I've injured every joint in my body, and it's never random. Like whenever I get injured, I'm always like, oh my god, like I can now that hindsight 2020, all the signs were there, like leading up to the, and I think there's a perception. I hear sports announcers say like, oh, like that injury happened, so he missed the season, but that was like a fluke, um, whatever. But to me, they're not. It's like there's some postural imbalance that leads to an injury down the road. Almost always, unless there's like a blunt force trauma kind of incident. Um, and so what I'm wondering is, as you've kind of gone through your life, and you said at one point you felt kind of broken, and now you've gone through, you've learned a lot, you've reassessed, you've kind of fixed your posture, especially in the shoulders. What does it feel like? What's the difference, like just in your daily life? Not even like going through and doing shoulder exercises, but like, did your shoulders sit more comfortably? Is there like, do you feel the lack of tension that you kind of say you observe when you see people like, yeah, just what I'm kind of looking for is like, you're a Buddhist monk. What is it like to be enlightened? That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, right, all right, cool. So I I have to remember what it felt like. to be in pain,
Yeah.
firstly, right? So, like, they always say, don't forget where you came from. Um, I think the old photos that we can have access to now from Facebook and stuff like that, like that's gold
Mhm.
because it reminds you of how far you've come.
Yeah.
I saw a photo of me probably 9 years ago, I think, and I had kinesio tape on this arm, and this is my strong arm, right? Um, I throw right-handed, but I right left-handed, so I need both arms for different things,
Yeah.
right? I sublocated this shoulder a few times when I was a teenager, um, and then this one was obviously what I said before about losing the use of my hand, and I also used to wear kinesio tape on this, and I'm the the point where I lost my use of my legs and the arm as well. That was probably the hardest moment of my life. So from a physical perspective, I was in pain every day, wake up in pain, go to bed with pain. I was taking painkillers for 6 months. I only read the label after 6 months and it said maximum 2 weeks. Whoops. Um, and I was seeing a lot of different people around that period of time that wasn't changing much. I was doing all my rehabilitation exercises um, and it wasn't changing. So that was when I was pretty deep down in depression. I was freaking depressed. You get the thing that you love taken away from you, you are going to be depressed. Simple as that. It's a sad
Yeah.
place and it's hard to get out of. It's hard to get back out of that. Um, so for me now, not waking up in pain any day, I don't wake up in pain. It's just amazing. I cherish every day. Like people ask me, sometimes I only do one or two sessions of training a week. And I'm so happy with that because I was at a point for 2 years where I didn't train at all, um, and that was hard. That was hard. So like for me to be able to train once or twice a week, 2 to 3 times would be amazing. But I have also got a almost 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and so sleep has been a fantastic journey for me the last few years. So getting back into my training, as a little example, like last weekend, I did a dragon boat training session. Right, I've never done one of those in my life, but I did a workshop, ran a workshop for them yesterday, the WA Federation or the state federation here, and I wanted to experience what it was like to actually paddle one of these boats. And there's 20 people in the boat just chopping at it, right? It's phenomenal technique involved. But I was super surprised. I thought for sure my left arm is going to blow up here, right? Just at the end of it, 2 days later, my right pec minor bicep was in pain. And I'm like, bruised kind of pain. Like, hey, yeah, you did too much work on that arm, right?
Hmm.
And I was very surprised because this is my strong arm, right? And my left one was fine. And then really easily, really simply, that day that it was the most sore, I did some of the exercises that I do, some retraining exercises that I do, and the pain disappeared straight away. That bruised pain before the session, no pain after the session. So when you get the balance in the system right, pain can come and go very quickly. And
Hmm.
I'm so thankful that that's what I can do for myself, the knowledge that I have with that, and that's what I do for other people. And it's something that I'm excited as well for my family. Like I train my mum, I train my sister. Dad's coming along as well very soon. So, it's a really nice thing that I can give to people just around me.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into one thing I wanted to ask you as well. You said you're training dragon boat people, you're training your family. Like who all are your typical clients, your typical students?
Mm.
How, just
Typically,
everyone.
like normally, it's the 30 plus people, and it is from all walks of life. These days, it's not really a lot of athletes because athletes tend to go physio first and go down that
Hmm.
route, and that usually works for them, which is fantastic. Um, I end up getting the people that have been to all the physios, have been to the maybe the chiropractors, practitioners, osteopaths, all these different people, and still haven't found the answer that they're looking for. They're the people that I kind of find, or they find me,
Hmm.
because that's always the story that I'm sending out, and that resonates with them. So um, yeah, they're the people. I mean, online, it's huge. It's every different kind of person. I mean, I talk to athletes, and it's from a lot from the US, a lot of athletes that are, I don't know, they don't have access to some of the knowledge that like I have I follow a lot of the good people. I kind of know when somebody's putting out just bullshit stuff. Like you see a lot of the physio stuff that just keeps getting repasted and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like do your external rotators, do your whatever exercises.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, like I try to stay away from those kind of people. But um, anyway, I think I've gone a bit
Yeah.
sideways with the answer to the question.
Yeah. It's so just on that note, like what is your normal training setup like? What's your style? I've seen in your videos it kind of looks like a CrossFit gym, but you're talking more about like functional style movements. Just how do you yeah, how do you what's the style like and how
Yeah,
do your clients kind of working?
so where did I start? My gym started off as it's open space, more functional movement, and then I've always been an advocate of kettlebells. That's where I started as a mobile trainer because like I did my Olympic lifting cert, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't chuck a barbell in my car, man. How can I train people like around doing mobile work, which is how every PT starts, kind of thing." So yeah, got into the kettlebells and I learnt like I did my International Union of Kettlebell Lifting cert with Vasily Ginko. He's 7-time world champion. And then from there, like I got into more of the strong first style of training because their principles I find worked better for my body. Just understanding the principles of strength and how to build them up first, and just having that as the first point of call to then I mean, sorry, the difference between strong first and like the kettlebell sport is about for performance in terms of an event, right? So you're
Mhm.
trying to do 10 minutes on a platform. Um, strong first is just literally about building strength first, and then you can go and do whatever you want to do with it. When
Mhm.
like when I opened my gym, I didn't have a lot of money to invest in like machines, and I'm not that person anymore. I used to be, but I'm not that person. So I chose not to have machines. And when you have limited equipment to help people figure out where they are, what muscles they need to use, you need to be resourceful with what you've got. What have we got? We've got the floor, we've got the walls, we've got some bars to hang on, and we've got our own body, right? Our own body weight to play with. So that's where understanding how to move your body and challenge people in different ways using just the body became just part of my everyday practice. So just discovering different ways to train people just using their body. And that's literally all I need these days is to help people get stronger, get out of pain, whatever they need is just their body. So I don't say rarely use tools like kettlebells and barbells, but it is a common practice, and it's everybody likes that as well. Just lifting something, moving
Mhm.
something, that's an important part of life. Throwing kids around. So yeah, these days it's more, well, I'm continually diving deeper into learning more about how to move my body, using my
Mhm.
body, because it's something that I didn't grow up with. I grew up with weights, machines. So, the world of gymnastics, the world of calisthenics didn't exist when I was a teenager. It was like you watch the guys on
Mhm.
the Olympics every 4 years do their ring work, and that was the only gymnastics I ever saw. So it wasn't
Yeah.
a big thing. Didn't see all these ripped guys doing hundreds of muscle ups and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I I don't do CrossFit. I dabbled in CrossFit a little bit. There's good things, there's bad things. For me, it blew me out of the water. Like it was just too much for me. Same as this shoulder, just got blown out of the water with a one single training session. It's just
Mhm.
I wasn't at that level where I understood my limits. And that's
Hmm.
where a lot of people get undone doing really intense sessions. They don't know their starting point. They don't know their finishing point, right? And we all think
Yeah.
that we can go beyond like more and more and more. And sometimes the coach is telling you more and more and more, and that's just part of what we do. But um, yeah, people just need to know their limits, right? And that's what I try to teach people in my gym is like, hey, you're going to hurt yourself if you can't do it this way. So stop doing what you're doing and just pay more attention to this one thing. This one thing, usually the one thing is breathing because people don't breathe
Hmm.
these days. So I'm like, stop. You're
Yeah.
moving until you can breathe, right? Mm.
Interesting. That's. Have you read? You know Hicks and Gracie, the jujitsu guy. I just read his book, Breathe, but
Nice.
that was just on my mind. I read that the other day, but it ties in well. But
Yeah, cool. I
all
learned
right.
breathing mechanics from
Interesting.
oh, what's his name? It's eluded me. He's an American guy. Used to train with the Gracies. Oh, come on, Steve Maxwell. There we go.
Steve
So
Maxwell.
he's an American traveling nomad. Came down to Perth one time to meet one of the guys that we have here in Perth. So he flew to Perth to meet a the world's best Indian club swinger. Right, he's in
That's
Perth,
cool.
and Steve Maxwell came down here, and so we hit him up for a workshop, and he taught us 3 or 4 hours of just breathing and stress management. Obviously, coming from background of BJJ, it's all about how are you controlling yourself when you're in the most stressful situation, being choked out, kind of thing.
Hmm.
So we did that, yeah, 3 or 4 hours of just breathing work and understanding
Interesting.
that mechanism, which was just phenomenal. It's huge. And then I've read the book by James Nestor, Breathe, and
Yeah.
it's it dives so much more into the science of it. And it all
Hmm.
just makes so much sense when you've got this the physiological aspects of what the breath is doing, why we have the breath, and then you got the
Yeah.
psychological aspects, fear, threat, whatever, and then you've got the nervous system, so just like
Hmm.
sympathetic, parasympathetic. It's just all these things that I've got to figure out if this person is like freaking out or the body is freaking out, the system is freaking out if they're trying to do a deadlift or if they're trying to do a push up or a pull up or something simple, should be simple, but their system's freaking out and they're not breathing. It's the easiest
Hmm.
way to tell. So yeah, that's a big part of training and well for me actually so Steve Maxwell was one guy I learned breathing from. Um, Nathan Baxter, he's Australia's uh, powerlifting bench press record holder. So he also taught me breathing and how weak I was. He got me under a 20-kilo bar once just to do some squats and told me how to breathe properly. I got to 4 reps and I could no longer breathe. My brain, I could not make that connection to breathe into the right place. And so 20-kilo bar, 4 reps, I was done. Anything beyond that wouldn't have been a good rep. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
just
that's where
for
you
people
got to stop and
watching,
rest.
yeah, for people watching, 40 kilos or 40. Was
20
it 20 kilos?
kilos,
It's 40. It's
44
44
pounds.
pounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
that's
a
like a
bare
normal
bar.
barbell. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a normal Olympic lifting bar.
Yeah.
It's nothing, yeah, there's nothing fancy about that.
Yeah.
So that's where I started
Interesting.
with
And so
building up my breathing strength.
the reason you couldn't do the 4 reps is because your breathing. He was forcing you to do a variation where you had to breathe perfectly to complete the rep or something like that, and your breathing mechanics weren't strong enough. Is it? Was it? Yeah. What was the
Correct.
limitation there? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It was neurological conditioning.
Interesting.
So because of my spine injuries when I was younger, um, whether that caused disruption in my breathing pattern or I had the breathing pattern disruption before that, quite possibly, chicken or the egg, which one came first? We don't know. But yeah, so disrupted how I was breathing. He forced me. It was pretty easy. It was just diaphragm breathing, right? Breathing down into your
Hmm.
belly, which I had never done. I was always,
Yeah.
just breathe into your chest. I did an Ironman when I was 22. Did an Ironman, so triathlon Ironman, and you're breathing a lot, but I wasn't breathing well with that,
Hmm.
and that was 3 years before I lost my leg. So lost my legs, lost the use of my legs. Um, so yeah, like people think that we're breathing well, just because we're breathing. Oh yeah, I'm still alive. Must be breathing well. Um, but no, like to breathe well enough to support whatever task you're trying to achieve, whatever output you're trying to get out of your system. It's everything. It's the first place, because if you, let's say you don't breathe enough, I'll throw the question at you. What happens if you don't breathe enough? What happens to the system?
Um, my just intuitively, I would say you get more tense. Like, or that's what I would feel. Is like
Yeah,
there's less
absolutely.
less less release, and just everything kind of tenses up.
Yep. And then what happens after that? If people continually to not breathe, they tense up, and then what?
If eventually if there's too much tension, there's postural imbalance, injury, something along those
Oh,
lines.
more so, like I'm going even further than that. It's like if the brain doesn't get enough oxygen, what happens?
It stops working.
Stops working. It passes out.
Yeah, yeah,
System reset. Alt Control Delete. Right. So
yeah.
if you don't breathe enough, it passes out. Yeah. If we breathe too
Hmm.
much, we hyperventilate. What happens to the brain? It passes out.
Interesting.
Right.
So there's the optimal amount.
On each end of the spectrum, the system resets.
Hmm.
So it's what we do in between that matters, right? And it's how we do that. Um, I love this, right? This philosophy of efficiency, because this is what Strong First taught teaches you efficiency, how to be the most efficient, how to move mass or force efficiently. And just last year, I think this was. I've been practicing strength for a while now, but last year I heard this fantastic quote of what efficiency means. And efficiency, one definition of efficiency means doing the right thing and then doing that thing right. That was unbelievably powerful for me, because I'm like, fuck. How does if you're trying to build strength, true strength, you need to be efficient, right? And everybody in the whole wide world is trying to be what we're trying to develop some sort of resilience. That's why people train and get stronger. We're always told to get stronger. We need to build stronger to be resilient against gravity and getting older and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, if we're all trying to build strength, and the what the human system wants to do is survive. It's built for efficiency. Our system is the most efficient system in the whole on Earth, but the Earth would probably be the more efficient system. Uh, we are a very efficient system, and it's going to adapt to whatever stimulus we're putting into it, or whatever stimulus we're not putting into it. I.e., I'm currently sitting down for an hour talking to you. That is an opportunity that I could be walking or playing or moving or doing something to produce a proactive, positive adaptation for my system. I could even not be sitting, I could be kneeling, I could be standing, so there's different options
Hmm.
here. Um, and that's causing an adaptation. Positive or negative, it's adapting, right? So where I was going with that strength. So all these movements that people are doing in the gym, if they're not doing it, well, if depending upon their goal, if they're not doing the right movement, the right exercise to achieve their goal, and then if the coach doesn't know how to cue them on doing that thing right, based on all that person's prior experience and knowledge and injuries and all this stuff, knowing where they are, spatial awareness, if that person doesn't know how to do it well or isn't doing it well, then they're going to end up injured. And that's where I realized as a trainer a long time ago that I was actually injuring a lot of people. I was doing the wrong thing by a lot of people by telling them to work harder, by motivating them to work harder. Before I had the knowledge to actually teach them how to work better. So that's where my head's at these days, is just learning better, more about how to teach people to move more efficiently in one thing before we add more complexity to that one thing, and then build capacity on top of that. And that's where then you get strength, you get resilience, you get efficiency. Once we've got that, then it's like, great, now you're free to range however you want. Go and play.
Yeah.
And that can take
Yeah.
3 months, it can take 12 months, it can take 10 years. Depends on the individual.
Yeah. It's You're reminding me of, there's a concept in martial arts. I am into martial arts, but economy of motion. It's all just about that. And just to tie a few things together that we're talking about, um, I like how you kind of set for breathing the ends of the spectrum. If you breathe way too much, you're gonna pass out from hyperventilation. You breathe not enough, you're gonna pass out. So there's that sort of optimal amount in the middle, and I think it's the same for training intensity. A lot of people, and you Ted mentioned it too. Like, they just want, they think, I need to burn as many calories as possible. I need to lift as much weight as possible to get the results as quickly as possible. But really, it's the same thing as like breathing too much. It's, if you're gonna overload your brain, and it's, the system's gonna shut down if unless you kind of do the optimal amount. It's
Yeah, a lot of
so yeah.
people these days, it's not about training for performance, it's about training for stress minimization.
What do you mean by that? The stress
So,
minimization?
yeah, so people, people, the environment we live in these days is stressful. It might not necessarily be mentally stressful for people or physiologically stressful, but it is. Here's an example. If a person lays in a hospital bed for days, they're okay. For weeks, they start to get bed sores, right? The body starts to break down if it doesn't move. It gets sick. So, if we don't move, we start to break down. If we move too much, we start to break down.
Yeah.
What happens in between is left up to the individual's thoughts, goals, coach, environment, all this stuff. For a lot of people, they're not moving enough, they're not breathing well enough, they're not eating enough of the right food, right? Eat the right thing and you'll get better. Um, and then because we're told that we should be healthy, and there's this picture of what health is, which is train hard, drink water, 10,000 steps a day. Uh, you don't see breathe better in any marketing,
Yeah.
except for Wim Hof. Okay.
Yeah.
um, so we as a society have been conditioned in the negative. We're all negatively adapting to this environment of ease, which then we go and try and train on top of that, and people just train too much sometimes for what they're trying to achieve, or what they think they can achieve. And so often, like, people try or think that they have to push weight to get stronger, move mass, work harder, go faster, right? Initially, in the first 6 to 8 weeks of any person entering a training program, doing anything new, it is all neurological reconditioning. So
Hmm.
if they've got a preconceived notion of how they should move, and then somebody's trying to teach them something different, well, that's a threat to the system. It's a mini threat, because it's like, this is not homeostasis. We're doing something that's not normal for my system. I'm operating outside of my normal, efficient, happy, comfortable zone, right? A comfort zone. Anytime you do that, it requires more energy. It requires the brain to check in. Hey, Is this going to kill me? Is that going to kill me? Am I safe? Is this guy going to kill me? Your brain's constantly checking in, and let's say there's just a little bit too much weight on the bar one time, and brain goes, no, this is not what I need, and something breaks, right? So you can achieve so much better results from teaching people how to move better first initially, removing their own system barriers like scar tissue, locked up tissues that are preventing them from moving well, and they will get stronger naturally just by removing those barriers. You don't
Hmm.
like the difference is like I'll get someone to, I call them resets. So you reset the part by rolling it out or doing something to the shoulder and then integrating it back into a movement pattern. And they're like, oh, yeah, wow, there's no pain. Great. Okay, now we're ready to lift. Versus if you just do a generalized warm up on a machine and then, okay, cool, we're doing overhead presses. And it's like, oh, it hurts a little bit, but, let me do a few more. Okay, yeah, no, it's gone away now. Right?
Hmm.
More isn't always better. Better is better. Yeah.
Better is better.
And it's first about training smarter, then about training harder, especially as you get older.
Yeah, it's yeah, like you said, it's really just about efficiently building a program in within your limits, without exceeding those limits. Like what can you get in there? And like you said, it's not always better to work harder. Like you mentioned that you train just a couple times a week now, because that's your limits, and to exceed those limits is not necessarily going to get you better results. It's not just always more is better.
My goal in the last few years is just to get through the day after, 3 hours of broken sleep. That's been my training goal. There was a period of time in my life where for the Ironman, I trained 4 or 5 hours a day. So, I compare my life now to then, and it's like I'm doing nothing, but I'm happy doing less compared to that because I was at a very different time in my life then. Now, if I
Hmm.
train once or twice a week, I'm actually still getting better. I did my first freestanding handstand the other week. Um, I've ever done. I've never done that. It's like a skill that my brain has never understood. So I know I'm getting better. I'm getting stronger, even though I'm doing minimal per week. I might even do 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day of just training, retraining my system. So it doesn't even have to be like an hour 2 or 3 times a week that I train
Hmm.
to get better. It's could be 10, 20 minutes a day for 5 or 6 days. And I'm happy with that as well. So the capacity at which people are training, it has to be in alignment with what your goals are. Right now I don't have a physical goal except for my handstand was one of them. Yay.
Yeah.
But
Congrats.
in order to like compared to like the Ironman or um, like I used to do bodybuilding and all that kind of stuff. You're always trying to push more, get more,
Hmm.
go more. So these days it's just about how can I figure that out, right? And um, yeah, get more capacity from my system that I didn't know I had, which is exciting for me. So
Yeah. I want to ask you about your bulletproof shoulder program, but just before diving into that, the handstand, I'm the same. I've never been able to do the handstand. I've tried a lot for someone who can't do a handstand. What do you have any recommendations as someone who kind of figured it out recently?
yeah, get a good coach. No, like seriously, hey, like um okay, so literally in Perth again, we got some good handstand coaches in Perth. I did one session with this handstand coach. Actually, no, look, I don't want to say I've just done one session. I've had a few gymnastics coaches who have taught me some cool stuff, and over the last few years, I've started to develop some skills and some understanding of how to move in a different way, in a three-dimensional way, right? So I have been building the knowledge and the skills in the last few years, but the handstand for me, I could kick up to a wall and I could do handstand push-ups, no worries. But as soon as I came off the wall, I'm like wobbly as shit. I'm like, what am I missing here? Um, and you can follow all the handstand programs and stuff you want, but again, it's It's not specific to where you're at and what you need.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Gotcha.
gave me hamstring stretches, quad stretches, couch stretching, and then teaching me how to press through my fingers.
Interesting. What
So
what was the
hamstrings influenced. Hamstrings were probably the biggest thing I noticed that influenced my ability to kick up and then hold.
it's the kicker? Okay.
Yeah, it's the kick up because you need to get yourself there, right?
Yeah. I would when you say it, it kind of makes sense, but my mind did not go to flexibility as
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: if
That's
you
cool.
aren't flexible enough to get your leg above your head before you've kicked, then you have to kick harder to get you there. The harder you kick,
Gotcha.
the more momentum you've got, the more inertia you've
Mhm.
got. Therefore, the harder your fingers have to work. So the more flexible you are, the less work you have to do. There we go. Love it.
Interesting.
I get it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, so let's I want to ask about the bulletproof shoulders, and just for context, can you I'm just curious kind of your career path. You mentioned you started as the mobile trainer, and then you have your gym now, and just through my observation it seems like you're going more in the online direction. You're putting out more content, you've got your online program. Is that me just reading in
Yeah.
too much or
Well, so like during COVID, the whole COVID thing, right? 2019, 2020 for us, they, we got locked down for a couple of months, and my landlord at the time just said, "Look, you got to deal with that and just innovate." And I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
fuck. Okay, now I have to go online." Because like I'm a bricks and mortar kind of guy. I like talking to people. I don't
Mhm.
like sitting in front of a screen all day. That would
Yeah.
frustrate the hell out of me. So I love talking to people and being face to face. I'm a face to face kind of guy. So this whole online game was not my forte. But COVID forced me to go online. It forced me to have these conversations, and I was having a lot of these conversations, and I ended up just talking to people about the same stuff all the time. I was like, man, this is getting repetitive. I need to do something with this. So I started building out the Bulletproof Shoulder program because it's based on all the conversations I was having, and I was just teaching people the same stuff over and over again. And
Mhm.
doesn't matter what the shoulder issue was, people were getting good results. An example: a 39-year-old bodybuilder had shoulder arthritis. Right, shoulder arthritis. He was too young to get a new shoulder. They literally need to replace the head because it looked
Mhm.
like a really bad welding job. Um, he was like 7 out of 10 pain every day. After 4 weeks of doing the simple stuff, he was then like 2 out of 10 pain every day. And then after four more weeks, he was like, I can just make pain go away when I want. He can do his shoulder workout knowing that he might be in some pain after, but then he can do some restorative stuff after that the next day to switch pain off, which is just that's phenomenal. So and then right up to the 73-year-old ladies I've worked with, it's like, I don't know if this is going to work. You're 73. Based on what I've learned, this shouldn't work, but it did. I'm like, fuck, all right, wow, this is cool. Um, so that's why, like, I talk to a lot of different people, and they're always like, "Oh, can you fix me?" I'm like, "Well, I think I can, but it's up to you." And how willing your system is to change. Because all it does, it just takes change. And some people are receptive to that, some people aren't. But uh, yeah, so that's how the Bulletproof Shoulder program evolved. Is just from having those conversations and recognizing just simple things that people can do 3 times a week. I've only got it 3 times a week. The program starts off at like 20-minute sessions 3 times a week, and people then it builds up to doing a full handstand, like at the end of 6 months.
That's pretty cool.
So whether people want to do handstands, there's other options. They can do other stuff in gym work and stuff there. That's fine as well. Um, but it's the point is it's building people up to being strong in this overhead position, whether it's from in
Okay.
a pulling pattern
Yeah.
or a pressing pattern. But usually for people, it's like they'll start off with, oh, I can't lift my arm above my shoulder, or that's painful, or it clunks, or it clicks, or whatever. So, being able to get there and then being strong there is a really beneficial strategy.
Yeah. And then as far as equipment goes, is the program designed to be run in a gym or can you do it at home? Uh, what type of gear do you need?
Yeah, both.
Both. Okay.
The most important piece of equipment people need is somewhere to hang, right? So
Okay.
whether that's at a playground, whether that's off a door frame, whether that's you got a monkey bars out the back of your house, just hanging. I mean, there's more than enough gyms out there around the world these days that people have access to. So, like, even if it's going to cost them $10 a week to join a gym, go and join the gym, right?
Hmm.
Um, if they can't hang it, they can still get there. It's just going to take longer. But there's the options of people can go through the whole program just at home. Like, I definitely have had that. But then, along the way, as people, when and if people want to get stronger, then they need more strategies. They either use tools or bigger body weight movements. Um, you know, for me, hanging, very first time I just hung after I just got my shoulder, very scary experience. I had 80 kilos of body weight there to play with. And even handstands, 80 kilos above my head, that's going to get me stronger.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Cool. Well, Jason, I don't want to keep you all day here. But I really did appreciate this. I there's a lot that I've wanted to know, and yeah, this I'm really appreciative of you coming on here.
yeah, no problem, Jake. More than welcome. And mate, I hope you've taken some good notes and you got a lot of rabbit holes to dive down into now to
Yeah, for sure,
come out the other
for
side. All
sure.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much.